the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the MHO show. I'm Chris Netto. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Melissa, Mike. Melissa, say hi to everybody. Where you at?
Hey, everybody. I am happily down here in Atlanta, Georgia today.
Enjoying the post-storm thing that happened a week or two ago? Nothing happened to you guys.
We think it's still summer here. It's 90 degrees.
You guys, I'm telling you, man, below that line, I'm in Jersey. Up here, it's definitely fall. Mike, where you at? How you doing? What's going on?
Good evening, Chris. Definitely fall. I'm in Philadelphia, and it's like 82 degrees outside. I'm not sure what's going on over in your parts of Jersey, but it was pretty warm today.
It's specifically, I guess, a foliage. Foliage? Mike, that's the right word? Foliage?
Foliage.
Yeah. Okay, that word. The colors are pretty. How's that? I'm a video guy. Come on, dude.
I do.
Colors are definitely pretty.
Colors are a good. Colors are a good thing.
Colors are pretty. So our show today is we had a little bit of a break in between our last couple shows and this one. So we would like to do a little bit of a report type thing. Melissa Dillman has been hitting the road for MHO, for AVNation, and for all for AV, which you can find out more about this at the end of the show. Melissa, your recent trip, you stayed in your area of Atlanta, Georgia. I went to go see the Microsoft Ignite show.
I did. The Microsoft Ignite show was hosted here in Atlanta for about a week. It was, I think, 4 days in downtown Atlanta. It was the first time I attended an IT show. It was very interesting. So day one, I dressed the professional part. I visited the folks I needed to visit and got the latest scoop. On day two, I thought I would give it a little whirl, and I switched over to my Infocomm gear. And I wanted to see...
Your Infocomm educator gear.
Yeah, if anybody would recognize my Infocomm logo, the fact that I was a teacher, a faculty member, if anyone would even recognize it or question it. And interesting enough, nobody had a clue.
Shocked. I am absolutely floored.
I have to tell you, this show was huge, right? Show floor, not quite the size of Infocomm, but the attendance was crazy. And I noticed that it was geared toward the IT influencers, the decision makers, and then enterprise developers. So, I mean, this was very much focused on the IT guys at the network level who are designing systems or software. So that was interesting to see that, but there was no questions, no education regarding our side of the world.
That's interesting.
Which I thought was a little strange. As much as we talk about them, they definitely were not talking about us.
Didn't they have a giant booth at Infocomm not too far long ago? I mean, how is it that we seem to be becoming infiltrated by their team, but when we show up, it's, ignorance?
Well, me being me, I had to go around and play a little pop quiz just to kind of get the feel to see what their knowledge base was about our side of the industry. And, I let them all off the hook very quickly because they had no idea what I was talking about. So when I was talking about transport methods and video, and they just shut down, which is okay entirely. They're like, well, whatever. It seemed to be very much the opinion that we're the guys in the shadows who make stuff work. And they clearly didn't want to engage as far as educating themselves on what we do. They leave that to somebody else. And that seemed to be the consistent message. This show, though, this show put our shows to shame. The use of technology, the way the show was set up, it was amazing. They had a huge video wall, huge, like auditorium-sized video wall, where everybody could come in, sit down, network together, watch some of the presentations that were going on. It was incredible, well lit. There was theatrical lighting, and it was incredible.
So they brought in the AV people just to give you a little bit of wow, and then they shoved them back in the back corners until they come at the end and tear everything down later.
There was so much wow factor. They did complete theatrical setups when they did their keynotes. They did it in Georgia, in Atlanta's big auditorium, in the Phillips Sports Arena, where we do concert level shows. And they pulled out all the stops. It was very impressive. One of the things that was super cool, and I don't know why we don't do it at our own shows, this was inside a huge arena venue, conference space, and about every probably 20 feet or so was a Wi-Fi hub.
Wow.
So there's a Wi-Fi router so that you had Wi-Fi and were fully connected no matter where you were.
Blanketed.
It was impressive. They certainly went above and beyond.
That's, you bring up so many interesting points. But one thing that stands out in what you just said is you walked up to the booths, you start talking about transport methods. Do they get stuck at what the HDMI what the HDMI connection was on their computer? Do they even
no. So I stopped at one of the big computer manufacturers and talked to a gentleman, and he was able to tell me what outputs they had, but he couldn't explain to me why. And he certainly couldn't tell me, I was questioning. Interesting enough, it was one of the large ones, and they were using USB-C. They were doing HDMI and DisplayPort.
No MHO?
Now the trend, no MHO. Yeah, so it was really interesting. And he really couldn't explain to me why they had chosen those, and I don't know, maybe he was just a sales guy. So that was kind of interesting. I'll tell you, they also, from the perspective of the comfort of the attendees, food was massively plentiful and free. Everything was free once you paid a significant fee to attend the show. Sodas, water, all of that. And if we were to go with Harry Mead Swag Hunt, he would have been in seventh heaven.
Wow.
Swag was heavy. So if we go with his theory that this sometimes is an indicator of how well industries are doing based on the amount of swag they produce, you could have collected enough swag to take another suitcase. Wow. It was everywhere.
All right, so I have a quick question. Exactly how well positioned was the Surface Hub?
It was in every major booth.
Really? So they're
Everyone.
really pushing the Surface Hub to all the managers.
Yeah. This was all about how everybody was adopting and implementing Surface Hub. Polycom, who was there, certainly that was one of their main focuses, is that they have incorporated all of their stuff into the Surface Hub.
As part of their as a part of link integration.
Yes.
And
so
Office
it was a
365,
huge component.
I assume. Yeah. I assume Office 365 was also
all of the new stuff. Interesting enough was that one thing that caught me off guard was the fact that they don't have huge booths like we do at Infocomm. All right. Now that makes sense, right? Most of these guys are software or service providers, lots of cloud storage. What they had were usually like 10 by 10s or maybe 15 by 10, something like that. And it was a flat wall with their signage, with their verbiage on it, and then a stand that would have business cards on it, an iPad, whatever. That was their booth.
What kind of Melissa? What kind of cross pollination do we have with this kind of show? Like, what brands were present at that show that you would see on the show floor at Infocomm or at other trade shows in the industry?
Very little. There was Polycom. There was Logitech. Interesting enough, there was one AV integrator there, Whitlock, talking about their services.
As a dealer,
not a lot,
right? I assume, right?
Yeah, not a lot of cross pollination, and I kind of had went to look and see. It was fairly minimal, but again, this was to the IT network builder.
And it makes sense. The companies that you're talking about are those with the UC strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are the companies that are also heavily partnered with Microsoft. You know, that makes it obvious. Obviously, you would not see some of the other competitors that would butt up against them, such as Cisco and stuff like that. So you have the software, you have one integrator, you have some of the VTC companies. Everything else is pretty much just IT.
Way above my head.
Way above your head.
Cloud, a lot of cloud service, a lot of security.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. They are talking about some of the same things we are. Do you move it to the cloud? How do you protect it once it's there? Security in the cloud was certainly huge. Tons of vendors on that. Several hardware vendors as far as your network cards and building up your networks.
What would you say was the ratio from hardware vendors to software vendors?
I would say it was probably 80-20. It was mostly software.
So could we predict that this is the prediction that we've been hearing about in all of our AV conversations, that at some point we're going to be at an 80-20 software to hardware in AV? Or are we going to continue to be the opposite because we still need microphones and displays and stuff like that?
I think it's really interesting because I've not talked to a manufacturer in our side of the industry lately that doesn't tell me they're moving to that software or service platform. If that's really where we're headed, it will change the footprint of Infocomm significantly. Maybe we're already starting to see that. We're seeing the booths start to downscale, right? You don't have the number of grand size booths. And I would dare say that even some of the larger booths, not that I'm speaking from experience, are pretty open. The floor plan is open because there's a lot of software they're pushing, less hardware. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we change and if we see the footprint of the show change.
Question for both of you then. Is this now going to, what Melissa saw, Mike and Melissa, what Melissa is describing to us from Microsoft Ignite, can we say that she got a sneak peek into Infocomm 2020 or Infocomm 2025?
Who are you going to first?
I'll go to you, Mike.
Well, we hear a lot, as Melissa said, from all of our manufacturers that they're moving towards a software model. I remember Polycom announcing in 2009. I was at Team Polycom saying we are no longer a hardware company; we are a software company. And then I just recently had a meeting with Polycom where I was introduced to the Trio, the Centro, and the Group Series. And it's like, well, okay, all hardware, not software. So, how far are we out? I think we're probably, Chris, closer to that 2025 mark than we are that 2020 mark. I would love for it to be the 2020 mark, to be perfectly frank, because I think that opens up a number of doors for integrators to actually, recoup gross profit and be able to really sell services as opposed to just hardware. But I still think we're at least 8-9 years away from that.
Interesting. What do you think, Melissa? Is this 2020 or 2025 at the speed that our industry has been moving with this whole, I'm not going to say the word, but it's a C word. What do you think? Is it 2020 or 2025?
I think I'd roll the dice on 2020. I'm not going to say that we're ready, but I think the manufacturers are going to force us there. They have seen the light that there's really, the money is not in the hardware anymore. It's certainly in the software. It's certainly in the service. And I think they're going to push us there, whether we want to or not, or whether we're ready or not. I think that's from their perspective and their financials, they're going to make us go there. So I would say we're going to see it in 2020.
Well, there you have it, folks. This has been an MHO show where we've been talking about the Microsoft Ignite Expo that one of our fine co-hosts went down and checked out. It may be the look into the future for the what the show floor at Infocomm at some point will become when we become more services as opposed to hardware. We're waiting and see. Melissa's obviously very optimistic that in the next 4 years we'll be definitely switching to an 80-20 model, while Mike is obviously thinking that, we don't move very fast, and they're both correct. It's their opinion. They're entitled to it, and that's why the show exists here today. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the MHO show. Melissa, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me at all4av.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Melissa Dillman or all4av. And you can always contact me through the web, through the show, or through Twitter.
Excellent. Mike, where can we find you on the internet and the interwebs and all the fine stuff?
I am found all over social media, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, etc. If you're on Twitter, it's at AXPMike. That's one of my preferred methods of communication. And I guess I need to create a new profile at this point called Pessimist AV. So at this point, I might be jumping off just to go do that right now.
So for Debbie Downer and Melissa Dillman, I would like to say that I can be found on the internet at Chris Netto, at Chris_Netto on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. But more importantly, you can find this show and a host of others on the AVNation network, and that's avnation.tv. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the MHO Show.